if voters ultimately validate that behavior by continuing to vote blue no matter who, no matter how bad the Democratic Party gets, and no matter how corrupt the DNC is, when does it stop?
Yeah, it stops when we win the goddamn primary. And by the way, that's impossible. No, it's not. Bernie came this close in 2016.
Okay. Man, it frustrates me. You see his hand? This don't mean nothing to me. If you were this close to winning the lottery, do you win a prize? Do you get to gloat and say, "Oh, I was this"? Like, no, you didn't win. So who cares? You want a cracker? You want a cookie for that? Like Bernie said, he was this close. Okay. What does that do for us? He got this close twice. What is it? The third time's the charm? Like, you really believe that? All right. So, I mean, it's it's only so many ways someone can try to explain something to people, okay? I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. As simple as possible. You have the Democratic Party who figured out, in just in my lifetime, I don't know if they've always been doing this, but just from what I've seen personally, they figured out that they don't have to win voters by policy ideas, by implementing extremely beneficial policies, bills, anything that better offs all Americans, or at least most Americans. It seems like they figured out all they have to do is say, Trump is bad, vote for me. Trump is bad, vote for me. If that's your only thing that you're giving me, I don't want to vote for you. And it just seems to really confuse people, because then they're gonna be like, well, we can't have another Trump presidency because, you know, he's really going to go crazy. And it's like, okay, all right, I'll vote for Joe Biden or whoever the Democratic decides to put up there. But then what about the next election? I mean, Republicans don't have a shortage of crazy folks. I mean, essentially everyone who's running is an issue. You know, Ron DeSantis is, you know, just imagine a more competent type of Trump figure. Look at Vivek, an amazing speaker, $1 million smile. He even got the "I hate myself" haircut. You know what I'm saying? And I think he'd be more that he wants to take away voting rights. Like, that's crazy on its own. You know what I'm saying? So when does it stop? When does the threat stop? It just keeps going. And then what are Democrats doing? Giving barely enough to shut you up. Okay, here. All right, here's a little bit. It's not going to solve the issue, but yeah, here's a little bit. Here's a little breadcrumbs. And a lot of these liberals are like, oh my God, that was amazing. He gave us a breadcrumb. Now we're good for another like year, maybe not even that. You know, what does that do? But I think folks are starting to realize the government can do more. They just don't want to. We know that the Republicans and the Democrat are serving one group of people, and that's the real elites, the real CEOs, the real people who essentially run this country. Like, it's obvious. Who's paying these politicians to keep the status quo? That's the ones that are running the entire show. So let's go ahead. watch this interview with Briahna and the host from TYT, the Young Turks, and the conversation seems to go good, but then it makes this weird flip, and I forget his name, the dude, he just it's like you can see his brain purposely not wanting to compute the answer. Like he's saying what we're all saying about the Democratic Party, but it's like he can't fix his lips to be like, oh yeah, the Democratic Party is a lost cause. It's like he doesn't want to believe that. So let's go ahead, watch this interview, and let's have that conversation.
They're the ones that are actually in charge.
Speaking of sheep herding, there are some who are over the idea of working within the Democratic Party who see the obstacles to actually winning as insurmountable after Bernie Sanders, who was better positioned than probably any candidate the left is going to have in generations, was thwarted the way he was thwarted by the Democratic Party. And now people are seeing the way the DNC is ostensibly rigging the election in various ways, not having any debates, saying that there will be no primary, changing the order of the primary contest, et cetera, in a way that makes it very difficult for insurgent candidates like Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. to advance in the polls. As a consequence of all of that, many people on the left are saying, I'm over participating in the Democratic Party entirely, are looking to third-party campaigns like Dr. Cornel West's campaign, and see those who would want folks to participate in any kind of electoral contest within the Democratic Party as doing exactly that, as sheep herding, especially when some of the people who might encourage one to vote for a Democrat ultimately in 2020 or 2016 and probably in 2024 are going to say at the end of the day, you should vote to defeat Trump and vote for the Democrat, even if they don't reflect the progressive values that you've said, and I agree, are so popular. What do you make of that argument?
So I think that rationality dictates that you have to understand the distinction between primaries and general elections. So the establishment says you shouldn't have primaries, especially on the Democratic side. You should just bow your head. Whoever's in charge, they get to dictate who should be the leader. And you progressives are rascals. You're so unruly. You must obey, right? If you listen to that, you're nuts. That is them totally brainwashing you. There should be a massive primary against Joe Biden. Poll out today, 72% of Americans think that he is not mentally capable of running again, that he's too old. 72%. And the lunatics in the Democratic Party and the lunatics in Washington go, yeah, we should run a guy that 72% of the country doesn't think could be president against Donald Trump. They say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, but let's run an addled, wounded antelope against this demagogue fascist. How does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay, so now, like I said, he's making sense. Like, we see it with our own eyes, and we don't understand why the Democratic Party is catering to prime up Joe Biden to essentially be the nominee, like hands down without no fight. Like, it's weird. Like, no, we see that. Don't do that. We see you don't do that. Okay. But now watch how he just doesn't care what he just said. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Oh, there's just their lust and their greed for power is unbearable. So that's the primaries. And in the primaries, Marianne is, at this point, clearly the best candidate. It's not even close, okay? But as you see there's one thing I wanted to quickly correct, because in my opinion, I don't think the Democratic Party has much power at all. So they set the debates, they set this, they set that. I understand that, but they don't rig votes. They just set all the context. And I hate the rules that they set, and I think they're deeply corrupt. But that's not the number one problem. The number one problem is media. If Marianne Williamson got the same amount of respect and coverage in the media as Joe Biden did, Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy gets, then Marianne would be in a real contest with Joe Biden. But the media freezes her out, shames anyone who supports, oh, she's not serious. Like, you morons are serious? You've ruined this country. But yes, when you get to a general election and somebody's sitting at 3% and the other two guys are sitting at 40%, well, brothers and sisters, I love you, but there is a reality that you are, in fact, taking a vote that would be against Donald Trump, and you're putting it in a category that is not going to win, and you all know that. I'm not saying today. I'm saying if you get to election day, and the polling still shows that, and don't give me this crap about, I don't believe in polling. I think 3% could magically turn into 51%. But if on that day, your candidate's definitely not going to win, why would you help Trump? Why? Why would you help him?
Okay, so before she answers, he says it's the media's fault. Okay, we know that there's a group of mainstream media platforms that cater to Republicans. We know that there's a handful of media, large media platforms that cater to Democrats. Marianne is and RFK running in the Democrat Party. But you don't think these media institutions aren't just going to follow what the elite Democrats want? You don't think they're going to pick up a few phones and be like, hey, CNN, hey, Marianne, you got an interview with her? Hey, guess what? Now you don't. Now you don't. Click. Like, I don't know if it's that easy. It might be an email. I don't know. But it all works together. If they rigged Bernie Sanders, who is Marianne Williamson compared to Bernie Sanders? I'm just saying, like, I don't like how he made the distinction between the two when it's obvious they work together.
It just makes no rational sense to me.
Let me ask you this, Cenk. Why would the Democratic Party ever stop? You don't want to characterize it as rigging. I will. Rigging the primary, disallowing a primary. Why would the media ever stop putting its finger on the scale the way that it does? If voters ultimately validate that behavior by continuing to vote blue no matter who, no matter how bad the Democratic Party gets, and no matter how corrupt the DNC is, when does it stop?
Yeah, it stops when we win the goddamn primary. And by the way, that's impossible. No, it's not. Bernie came this close in 2016.
Okay. Man, it frustrates me. You see his hand? This don't mean nothing to me. If you were this close to winning the lottery, do you win a prize? Do you get to gloat and say, "Oh, I was this"? Like, no, you didn't win. So who cares? You want a cracker? You want a cookie for that? Like Bernie said, he was this close. Okay. What does that do for us? He got this close twice. What is it? The third time's the charm? Like, you really believe that? Stop using that excuse. We got this close last time. Well, okay, congratulations. If anything, that sounds a little bit more embarrassing, you know?
And he came this close in 2020. He won the first 3 states. And who stopped him? Was it the Democratic Party that stopped him? No, it was corporate media that then
they worked
tons
together.
of negative coverage on Bernie. Can we get past corporate media? Of course we can.
You don't think it was the Democratic
super hard,
Party?
and that's their wall that's meant to keep us out, right? But look at us. You're doing it on Rising. We're doing it on Young Turks. And all of us are getting past it by having these conversations and having it reach the American people. Can a progressive win a primary? Absolutely. But we need to have progressives who try and who bring us together on economic issues like Bernie did in 2016. And then I guarantee you victory. That's also what the book is about. I guarantee you victory in 2028.
Cenk, you don't think that the Democratic Party played a role in Obama calling the leading candidates, including Pete Buttigieg, who at that point had done better than Joe Biden, and asked him to drop out after the South Carolina win? You don't think that that's evidence that the Democratic Party is willing to do whatever it takes to consolidate around a non-progressive candidate?
Briahna, I don't disagree with you 1%. That's not what I'm saying. I know Obama did that. I know that the so-called moderate Democrats, who are actually corporate Democrats, coalesced. By the way, Elizabeth Warren has done many great things in her career. You cannot wipe that away. But her not coalescing with Bernie, both in 2016 and critically in 2020, cannot be forgiven. It was just, when they coalesce, we have to coalesce. Anyways, But Briahna, what I'm saying is that was not the critical factor. Obama can get all of the corrupt Democrats together and all the corporatists together, and they can go, woo-ah. But if the media doesn't then smear Bernie and doesn't elevate Biden, it doesn't work. It's the media that's the critical part. The Democrats try to rig elections, but if the media didn't play along, that plot would not have worked at all. Bernie would have won the fourth primary state, and it would have been over.
They work together. Do you not under? It's like football. Okay, I'm gonna use the Patriots because the Patriots gotten in trouble for this. It's like the Patriots being the Democratic Party. They inflate the balls or whatever they do with the balls to benefit them more. But then they pay the refs, and the refs is the social media. Both riggings play a major part. You can still inflate the footballs and still use that as leverage to win, or you could just pay the refs and use that as leverage to win, or you could do both. The more the merrier. The more you rig the system, the more chances you have of winning. Why I don't understand why he's like, no, like only this part is the like. No, you don't think Obama has enough juice to be like, hey, CNN, I'm making that call again. Oh, you have a RFK coming through? Guess what? No, you don't. Click. Like, now, I don't know if Obama's calling personally, but it wouldn't surprise me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is obvious you have to LIG it. Let it go. Okay? It's that simple.
We were so close. My problem with progressives in Congress is we got near the goal line, and now they're going backwards. And they're going, oh, corporate Democrats, we bow our heads. We all endorse Joe Biden. Are you nuts? What are you endorsing Joe Biden for? He's a terrible candidate. He's a weak candidate. He's going to lose. He's not very progressive. And you endorse him without getting anything in return? Don't you know even elementary politics? Use your leverage, for Christ's sake. Guys, you've got to trust me on the numbers. We're going to win these primaries. And mainstream media gets weaker by the day, and we get stronger by the day. Those primaries are ours. It's just like even today, why don't we have a more forceful primary against Biden? Because while the media whines and complains about Biden, the minute that anybody steps in the race, they go, how dare you put your head to the leader? If you're a Democrat and you're a progressive, are you nuts listening to corporate media? No, do not ever listen to corporate media. Their job is to lull you back into sleep and make sure that you love the status quo and that you obey corporate rule. Do not do that. Go and fight in the primaries. It is not at all too late. Look, if these are the only choices we have, voting for Marianne Williamson in the primary is the biggest no-brainer a progressive should ever have. There's no reason in the world to vote for Biden. She's both a stronger candidate and a more correct candidate.
Jake, let me ask you this before we go, and I'm sure you get into some of this in your book. You know, I think you're so correct to rail against the mainstream media, the corporate media, and the choices that they make. And you know, obviously we're part of a corporation, so I guess I can't say we're not corporate media, but we try to platform and celebrate alternative narratives like your own. But let me ask you this, because you went after Jimmy Dore a little bit a minute ago. I've noticed that in a lot of these independent and alternative media spaces, voices we've featured on the show before, people who got big by having very pro-Bernie Sanders audiences and messages, have had, if not a right-wing drift, I'm not sure that's in the direction of progressivism, or it's not in the direction of normal Bidenism either. It's in a direction, I think, of being more open to the right, people whose audiences, I think, have that perspective, like Glenn Greenwald's audience, Russell Brand's audience. We're going to be talking about Russell Brand later today for anyone watching this right now. That kind of thing. How does that square with your thesis on the inevitable takeover of progressivism?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Number one, people are getting so frustrated with the Democratic Party because they almost never deliver that they're looking for alternatives. I mean, look, as a meta issue, that's why Trump won in 2016 in the first place. The country is so deeply anti-establishment except no one on TV will ever tell you that because they are the establishment. They're not going to come on TV and go, hey, by the way, country, I'm going to end the gaslighting here. It turns out you guys all hate us. They're not going to say that, okay? So that is the absolute reality here. So, but when you get into the Jimmys of the world, there's audience capture and there's financial interests, and then some have just lost their minds, in my opinion, okay? And so, for example, Jimmy does a video that's pro-vaccine. It doesn't get a lot of views. He does one that's vaccine skeptical. It gets a lot of views. Guess what he does next? 20 more videos that are vaccine skeptical. That's called audience capture, and you partly do it for the ego, and you partly do it for the money, and it takes strength not to go in that direction. And the right wing is going and capturing these hosts one by one, and everybody has their different things. Look, I don't know Russell Brand and Glenn Greenwald's situation, but I do know that sometimes if some people have done terrible things, where are you going to go? You're not going to go to the left, where they're going to out you and they're not going to support you. You're going to go to the right, where they circle the wagons and they say you can do anything you want as long as you agree with us.
Cenk,
Let's go ahead. Okay, so it is important to understand the realities of the powers that be and the opportunities and the wiggle room and what is possible in reality, okay? I think we have more of a chance to support and establish a third party before we can force the Democratic Party to be more left and more progressive any day. Cornel West will be president before the establishment, the centrists, the liberals will ever lean more progressive. It will be a cold day in hell before that happens. Pigs will literally be flying in the sky before Joe Biden ever pushes or leans or puts his foot against being more progressive. What is the money that is involved into the Democratic Party and Republicans is proof of that. No one's going to give up their money in order to go against the grain. That's why it is essential for regular folks like you and me to actually put our votes where our mouths is, where our mouths is, okay? You can't just be talking all this stuff. You know, we need a third party. The Democrats suck. The Republicans suck. We need. And then when the rubber hits the road, you're like, Joe Biden, because we don't want another Trump. Like, no, you completely lost the fight already before the fight even begun. You already lost if you truly believe that is a reason to vote Democrat. I don't know. I could be wrong, but let me know in the comments if you feel like it's going to be light at the end of the tunnel if we just vote for Joe Biden one more time. The next 4 years in 2028, maybe we can. It's not going to be a Trump issue, or is it? Okay, maybe 2032. Maybe a third party, or will it? Like, when does this cycle end? So once again, let me know in the comments if you disagree with me. And like always, let's have that conversation.